Now, when you think of the fashion capitals of the world, certain cities spring to mind: New York, London, Paris, Milan. But excitement has been building around fashion from a completely different part of the world, Africa. Joining me in the studio to give us more of an insight into this fashion phenomenon are Ola Shobowale, Creative Director of Africa on the Catwalk, and Erzumah Ackerson, who's the designer and founder of the fashion brand Besto Allen. I'll come to you first of all, Ola. I mean, is that fair to say that, fashion is associated with certain parts of the world and perhaps less so Africa, or is it just that it's not so known in the rest of the world?
I mean, the fashion industry has a tier system, obviously. So the Milans, the London and the Paris at the top of it. Then there are other fashion weeks: Berlin, Sao Paulo, even Mexico has one, and et cetera, around the world. So there are fashion weeks going on from the beginning of the year right into the end.
Right.
But the emphasis is on the main four.
And part of London Fashion Week this year is Africa on Catwalk, which you're in charge of. Just summarise, tell us a bit about it, what we can expect to see.
Africa on Catwalk was initiated 2 years ago as part of Africa Utopia. I was brought on board by Hannah Poole, who in turn was the musician Baba Mao, wanted to have a fashion show, and he told Hannah the South Bank originally weren't going to have one, but by Hannah Poole. And African on Catwalk was just an opportunity to bring designers who were inspired or originated by Africa, and to show them to a different audience who weren't used to or had never seen a fashion show before within the South Bank context, because it is open to the public, so anyone can come and see and take part in it. And
Erzumah's one of those fashion designers who you're wearing one of your fabulous designs at the moment. Just talk me through it, because I'm seeing a bit of 50s sort of vibe there from the shape, but also an African influence. Tell me about what has influenced you.
Well, my main influence generally is the 50s silhouette. That's my thing, and vintage, as well as my cultural background. So what you're seeing here is the use of traditional kente fabric, which originates from Ghana.
Yeah.
So I've used it and kept my 50s silhouette, which is, you'll see running through a lot of Besto Allen's designs, and created this new look.
And we've seen some of your other designs here in the background.
Yeah.
Tell me, so you say that you use traditional kente cloth, so it's not just sort of inspired, because we at different times in fashion we hear kind of tribal prints are in, aren't they? And they're presumably not authentic, but this is authentically what people are producing in Ghana.
Yeah. I mean, I felt it was very important to introduce to the mainstream what Africa is actually producing and what they have always produced. I've teamed it with a wool, which is a wool mix, which is obviously a contemporary fabric. So it's just a question of fusing both nations, really.
Yeah, and sort of putting together some cloths that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily expect to see together. I think we're actually going to see some more of your work now. Is this what we can expect to see at Africa on Catwalk, or is this some earlier work?
Oh, this stuff is actually from a Rise Fashion Week.
Right.
Yes, I took part in a Rise Fashion Week for 2 consecutive years in Lagos. So this was more of a, as you can see, these designs are more contemporary rather than 50s. So this collection was, this is my Seraphim collection, and it was inspired by quite space-agey.
Right, but still with an African inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, the fabrics I used in those collections, the shapes, and I fused leather, and I think the collars and everything else is where I get my African. Added my African inspiration. Yeah.
And obviously we can see that influence in Erzumah's work. But Ola, what distinguishes African fashion from any other fashion? Is there a distinction to be made?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, because it's evolving. That's the main thing. And things like Arise have done, and the interaction with other elements within. I'm talking about, other parts of the design, like the technology used to make fabrics and whatnot. So what you get now is that when people do think of African, you traditionally think of the wax print. But what's happened now is the wax print itself, but like Marni did the thing with H&M. Now they took the wax, it was actually wax print, it was cotton. So it's no longer African wax print, but it is still an African-inspired fabric, and I'm the print. So in terms of the designers, the people are moving to different directions. Some are moving closer to researching the traditional fabrics, like Nigerian Ashoke, or in Sierra Leone, they've got like the mud cloths and stuff like that, while others are going completely new direction, are going completely futuristic and contemporary in their own direction. So obviously the two hubs, based Lagos, Dakar, and South Africa, those main hubs, and Ghana as well in Accra, they all have their own different energies and how they want to interpret what is generally called African fashion. But I think the definition will keep on evolving as we go along.
But so-called what we might call traditional African fashion, whether that's the correct term to use or not, I think perhaps people outside the continent might think, well, that's standing still. You have these traditional kind of clothes that people wear and they have been wearing for years. Is that not true? In fact, are they evolving as fashions would in any culture?
Well, I think so. I mean, I've had a recent trip to Ghana, and just to see people on a day-to-day basis how they dress, they've also taken on board what we're doing in the West as African designers, as well as bringing in their own touches. So I think African fashion, the word is more of a definition of the fabrics as opposed to the shapes, because I think the shapes are changing quite drastically. Designers are putting in a lot of their own personalities and what they're inspired by in their their environment. So yeah, I mean, African fashion, I think it's an umbrella that a lot of African designers are under, but we're all very different.
Yeah. Who would you like most to see on the front row at the shows? Are there any sort of big famous names that you expect to see there, who might showcase some of the fashions?
What are you talking about in general? Or?
Yes. Or any specific names, any celebrities who've kind of supported the African fashion label?
Well, Lupita would be good to start with. She's a favourite. Maybe
She
Lyra.
looks beautiful in anything she wears, frankly, doesn't she? Yeah.
Lyra from South Africa, the singer. She'll be another ideal person.
And is it very important for African fashion that this is part of London Fashion Week?
Yes, in a sense, I would say, because it draws attention from arenas where we don't normally feature in. And it brings people, for instance, now, there are people who are coming to this one who didn't come to the last one because it's part of Fashion Week. And we do actually have people flying in from Geneva, got someone coming in from Canada. So, yeah.
Erzumah, who would you most like to dress?
That's a... I was going to say Lupita. I know it's a bit of an obvious one, but yeah, she would look great in any of my designs.
I suppose, yeah. Is the thought that you kind of don't mind who you dress? It's not just African fashion for African women.
No, not at all. I mean, there's a lot of mainstream people that I see every day that I think would look. Jessica Alba would look amazing in my pieces. She's got the right silhouettes. Okay,
well, if they're watching, hopefully they'll see what you're wearing and want to pick some up. Just remind us where we can see some of the designs when the catwalk, the show's
the
on?
show will be on September the 13th at the Royal Festival Hall. And it's at 2:30 p.m. And it's
anyone
free.
Can come
Anyone
along?
can come in.
Super. All right, then, well, I'll be there. Ola Shobowale and Erzumah Ackerson, thanks very much indeed.